I'd like to share a folk tale. It's called The Edge of the World. And I like this folk tale because I think it's got a little bit of humor, and I think it does, as I said before, talk to the human condition. So this is The Edge of the World. There was a young man who seemed to have everything he needed in his life. He had a nice house, a nice job, lived in a good place, but he was strange in some ways, in that if he got an idea in his head he couldn't figure out or couldn't solve, it just drove him wild and he couldn't think of anything else. Well, one day he got on the idea of luck and good luck, and people talking about my lucky day or my lucky penny or anything pertaining to if I have enough luck, I'll win the lottery or something like that. And he couldn't figure out what good luck meant, and he thought, I've never had good luck. I don't know what people are talking about. So he went to the wise woman in the village and asked her, and she said, I can't answer that question for you. Nobody could answer that unless you go to maybe the king of the gods. Well, where's he? He's at the edge of the world. Well, how do I get to him? You just get out there and start walking, and eventually you'll get to him. So he did. And he walked a day, a week, and a month, and then he came along to a group of wolves playing by the side of the road. And those wolves looked so happy and healthy, and they were howling, practicing their howling and rolling around in the dirt. But there was one little tiny wolf, scrawny little guy, about half the size of the others. His hair was all matted down. He just looked awful. He was sitting on the edge watching, and he said, hey, mister, where are you going? And he said, well, I'm going to find the king of the gods at the edge of the world to answer some questions for me. He said, would you ask him a question for me? Would you ask him why I look the way I do? Look at my brothers and sisters over there. What's wrong with me? Would you find out? And he said, sure, I'll try. And he took off, and he went a day, a week, and a month, and he came to a grove of trees. Pine trees, beautiful, strong trunks and branches, and the pine needles on them were gleaming, except just like the last experience, one scrawny little tree with branches that went every which way, and the needles were kind of brown and falling off at the least little breeze. And that little tree said to him, hey, mister, can you help me? And he said, well, what do you want? He said, I want to find out why I look the way I do, why I can't grow like the other trees. And he said, well, I'm going to see the king of the gods. Maybe I can find out. And he took off. Walked that same day, week, and month again. And then he turned, there was a curve in the road, and he came upon this beautiful cottage, gleaming white, with green shutters and planters under the windows, full of bright red geraniums. And in front of the cottage was a picket fence and all kinds of wonderful flowers. And then the door opened, and out stepped the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. And she said, oh, I'm so happy to see someone. Come on in and have lunch. So he did. And they chatted and got along. And in the process of the conversation, he told her where he was going. And she said, oh, would you ask him a question? Ask him why I'm so lonely and what I could do about it. So he said, oh, sure. And then he went along, left her cottage, and he walked that day, the week, and a month, and all of a sudden he looked down, and there were his toes right at the edge of the world. And he looked around, and he looked up, and he saw just sky, beautiful blue sky, and clouds, and sunshine, and it was an overwhelming sight. He just stood there. And all of a sudden, up from somewhere came this big cloud, and there was the king of the world, strong and tall and wearing a white velvet robe and a crown and gold decorations all over that robe. And he said, what are you doing here? And the young man said, well, I have a question for you. What's your question? I want to know why can't I have any good luck? Why haven't I never had good luck? Well, the king of the gods looked at him and said, that's because you're stupid, that's why. You don't know good luck when you see it. Now get out of here and don't bother me anymore. You just get out of here and you look around. You'll find out what good luck is all by yourself. So the young man didn't know quite what to do. He said, oh, I also have some questions. I know you got questions. I know everything. And he told him the answers to the questions that he had been asked along the way. And he said, now, get out of here and go find out what luck is. So the young man left. He could not figure out what the king of the gods had been talking about, but he started walking day of the week of the month, and then he came to that cottage again. And this time that beautiful girl was out in the garden, and she jumped up when she saw him coming, and she said, "Oh, you're back. I've been so glad to see you. Come on in, let's have lunch again." And they did, and they got along even better. And she finally said, "Will you tell me, what did you learn about what I should do about being lonely?" And he said, "Well, I got the answer. The king of the gods said, if you got married, you wouldn't be lonely anymore, so you should find yourself a husband." "I should get married?" "Yes." "Well," she said, "would you like to marry me?" He said, I can't. I've got to go find out something about good luck. But if I see some nice young man along the way, I'll send him back to see if he's interested in you." And he left. And he walked till he came to that strand of trees again. And that little tree was out there saying, "Hey, mister, what'd you find out?" He said, "Well, your story is so interesting, because it turns out that years ago, some robbers were trying to escape from the sheriff who was chasing them. They had bags of stolen gold, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they dug out around your roots when you were just a little seedling, and they buried that gold, and therefore your roots have never been able to grow. Now, if you just dig out those bags of gold, then you will start growing, and you should get to be as tall as most of those other trees." "Well," said the little tree, "Mister, would you get a shovel and dig out that gold, because you can have it all. What good is gold for me? I'll give it all to you if you'll just dig it out of there so I can grow." "Well, I'd love to help you," he said, "but I got to go find out what good luck is. But if I see somebody who looks strong, I'll tell him to come back and shovel out those coins." And he left. And he walked that day, that week, that month, and he got back to the wolves. And that little scrawny wolf was standing there waiting patiently. And he said, "What did you find out, mister?" And he said, "Well, you got a strange answer from the man, from the king of the gods." "Yeah, what did he say?" "Well, he said, your problem is you don't eat right. If you ate right, you would grow and be strong and healthy. And his advice to you was to go ahead and eat the first healthy, dumb animal that comes along." Are you sure that's what he said? It's exactly what he said. The first healthy, dumb animal that comes along, you should eat him. Okay. And he did.